All right, good evening, everyone. This is the first meeting of the Fiscal Advisory and Budget Committee, October 19th, 2020. We're both in person and remote, so I know we have some folks on the remote end. If anybody's having trouble getting into the Zoom, then just make sure to call that phone number to get help. Otherwise, we will get started here. I know a couple of people have already texted they're running late, so we'll welcome them in as they get here. Otherwise, I'll pass it over to Marianne.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to budget preparation for the school budget session of 2021-2022. Seems like we just started. So first of all, I'd like to welcome all our Fiscal Advisory Committee members. So welcome back, and thank you for being here, both in a remote setting and face-to-face setting. Welcome again to our school board members, who we see quite often, and thank you for all your dedication and hard work. Both to our school board and fiscal advisory members, we certainly couldn't go through this process without you and wouldn't want to go through this process without you. It is indeed a process, and I know that we will learn a lot from you and with you as we go through this process and this journey together. So first of all, thank you for your dedication, commitment, hard work, and we wish you all safety and good health along the way. So we are going to begin with the Derry Cooperative School District proposed budget presentation. Jane Samard deserves an incredible amount of credit for this work. She has worked really for months on this. So Jane and Accountant Bill Roy have done an exceptional job. So Jane, first and foremost, thank you for all your dedication and hard work to this process and in putting this entire budget together and presentation for this evening. I will begin with the first couple of slides, and then Jane will move on from there. So first slide really talks about working together to create a budget. As you know, we're a very collaborative team. Administration, school board members, and fiscal advisory members and committee members. The administrators are listed to the left, and really it goes without saying, many of whom are not named are simply listed under program directors and principals. We have our assistant principals as well, and they aren't listed by name, but certainly they know who they are, and we know who they are and what they represent. This year in particular certainly has been a journey. It will continue to be a journey, and I think everyone has done an outstanding job, both remotely and on site, to educate our students in the fullest and to the fullest possible extent. We are incredibly pleased and excited every day to see our students both remotely and on site, and will continue to work to the best capacity that we have and to our fullest to execute safety for students and staff and families. And so far, I think we've been very successful at doing that with the help of our entire community, not only our learning community, but the community at large. So I'd like to take a minute to reflect on that and really to thank everybody involved, because really it's a task of everyone. We can't do it alone. I always say that in my messages on Fridays, and hopefully that resonates through to everyone. Our community leaders have done an outstanding job as well. I think we have an incredible partnership, and that also goes for the second column. Our school board, Derek Anderson, Chair, Brenda Willis, Vice Chair, Nick Delatour, Erica Cohen, Michelle McKinnon, Lynn Perkins, and Jessica Ring. Thanks all of you. You're available all the time, and really, I don't think any of us could ask for a more supportive school board, a more dedicated school board than the Derry Cooperative School District has. So I want to take time to recognize each of you and thank you for your collective commitment to our students of Derry, to our staff of Derry, and to our community of Derry. You're just incredible. So I really believe we are at the place that we are right now in October because of your belief in us and because of your belief in the system. and because of your support. So thank you. To our Fiscal Advisory Committee members, Carla Cardo, Gus Kokoza, Bruce Kling, Glenn Manchester, Brian Myers, Dr. John Moody, Noreen Tabor-Walkup, and Neil Weatherby, thank you for returning and sticking with us, and also really giving us your input on a constructive basis and your honest input. We value what you say, how you say it, and working with you in a collaborative nature. So thank you from the outset, and certainly know that any of your suggestions are valued, and we will try to do our best to move along this journey. And I believe we always listen, and we are collaborative in nature. The next slide really articulates our collective commitments as a Derry Cooperative School District. You have seen them before. I know Dr. Dancy's going to put those up. And speaking of Dr. Dancy and David Minkle, we couldn't exist without them. They are here this evening, and they are always here for board meetings and everything else that we do. So Dr. Dancy and David Minkle, thank you for all that you do to make all of these meetings timely and in quality in nature. So our commitments have not changed. I think they've improved. So by way of not changing, I won't read each one to you of these to you tonight. I will say they are really based on pillars and grounded in pillars of learning, growth, and connections. In what I say to the community just about on a weekly basis, I always try to stress that learning, growth, and connections. That's very, very important for all of us, not only in former years, but particularly this year. We learn, grow, and connect together. That's what our budget should be based in, and I hope that you see those connections as we go through and articulate some of the reasons and rationale behind our budget requests for 2021 to 22. We believe our commitments are strong. They're grounded in reason and purpose, and they're really centered on students and around staff as well, but particularly around students who are at the center of all that we do. And our staff, and just saying that, have really been incredible. They're really an incredible staff every year, and this year, I cannot say enough about the commitment of the Derry Cooperative School District staff. Jane?
Thank you, Marianne. So before we start, we'd like to talk a little bit about what's been handed out to you. Most of the information was in your book when you picked it up. There was an informational sheet that was on the inside cover on your book, talking about some of the things that you would want to know in your budget book, some of the areas where we weren't able to put things into the budget because we haven't received numbers yet. So that's a good sheet for you to refer back to when we're looking at some of the things that are included in your budget process, and to kind of go over what the function codes are, so you'll be able to identify sections of your budget. If you had questions on certain items, you'd know where to go in your budget book for that. And because people are remote, we're trying to send everything that we revise or have changes to, or any document, will be sent to not only the fiscal advisory and school board members who are remote, but hard copies will be here for everyone. And if anybody who's on our remote panel needs to have hard copies printed, we can certainly have them available in our office for you. But we did pass out and also sent it through email. It is titled Summary of General Fund Approved Budgets by Categories. It's the 2-page document that has a ton of numbers. And we would like to thank Bruce Kling, who has worked on this document. He has, for many years now, done what he calls a budget roll-up, which was pretty much the first page, and he added more information to the front, and then the whole back page of supplementary information that is really good reading, and it's really good to understand where the budget has been back to 2006. He breaks it down by categories: tuition, health insurance, salaries, and a lot of really great information is in here. So I encourage all of you, while it's a lot of reading and a lot of numbers, It's some great information that can help you with some decision-making as we move forward with our budget process. So thank you, Bruce, for taking care of all that for us. And the FY 21 column in there were the estimates from, the approved budget for 21, and then these are the FY 22 is what we've estimated starting for the budget process. So that's a really great document that should help everybody out. I also wanted to talk a little bit about how we did the budget process. As you know, with COVID this year, that's consumed much of our time, but of course the budget is also extremely important for next year. It's a little bit difficult to project for next year because we do have so many students that are either working remotely or in our homeschool program, and I'll talk about that as I go through the slides on enrollments and how we're projecting for next year. But we are well aware of the financial constraints. Last year, we know when we worked through the budget process and we received the one-time fiscal disparity aid of a little more than $3 million, we knew that this was going to be a tough year to budget for 21-22, knowing that we're starting out the budget process with a loss of revenue of that 3.4 cents, 3.3, since that was one-time funds. So knowing that as we go into the budget process, there are also things, because we are very early in the budget process, we're only in the beginning of October, we had just finished putting our budget numbers together and the guaranteed maximum rate came in for health insurance and dental. So I'll talk about those as we go along. So there's going to be sections of our budget that just based on timing, we're going to have to update numbers for the next budget meeting, which I believe is the 2nd? November 2nd. So we will update our health insurance, our dental, and I believe our workman's comp, unemployment, and property liability have also recently come out after we've put our budget together. We also know we have not set tax rate yet, so there was some, we've been waiting to see about kindergarten aid, and we had our meeting Tuesday night with the board, and so we know that we're going to anticipate receiving the kindergarten funds. So once we've finalized calculating the tax rate, that will also be brought forward to the committee and the board so that might help you in some decision making. So I'm going to go right into enrollment and look at our schools and the history of enrollment back from 2017 to 2018. I certainly don't need to read all of these, but they have all 7 schools. But what you can see, if you look at some of our schools, they have increased in enrollment projections. For example, Ernest P. Barca is increasing. Derry Village, East Derry, Grinnell, South Range, and Gilbert H. Road, West Rennerbrook, they all have lower enrollment projections for next year, not by a lot. And a lot of it is not in one particular grade level so that you can reduce, a lot of classes. They're really spread out. So the methodology that we used were promoting our students like we would normally do, and I'm going to get into that in the next couple of slides, but I just wanted you to see what the history was of where our enrollment trends are going based on actual enrollments. These are all based on October 1 enrollments that you can see. The next slide, again, it's a historical, just so that you can see 10-year of student enrollment, which includes pre-K through grade 8 for us in the Derry Cooperative School District and Pinkerton projected enrollment. This next slide is really just giving you an update on our current curriculum and the years that we have our programming till. So for example, for math, we have the Envisions math program, and that is through 2022. So as you can see with each of these curriculums, you can see the date in which the programs expired or where we need to look to update some of our programming. And we've increased and we've been working a lot on online resources for learning, for math, literacy, language arts. We have a lot going on that's remote. So, but we wanted to give you an idea of where we stand curriculum-wise. The next slide shows you what our school board class size goals are. So when we're looking at our budget and whether we can decrease a class or whether we need to increase a class, it's all based on the school board class size goals. So as you can see, these have not changed for quite a while. Kindergarten, the class size goal is to not have more than 18 students in any class for kindergarten. Grades 1 and 2, try not to have more than 20. Grade 3, no more than 22. 4 and 5, no more than 25. And grades 6 to 8, we try to have not more than 25. Now, we know that there's going to be times if a student moves in the middle of the year or any time during the year, and you have 20 students already in grade 1 and a child moves in, yes, you're going to have 21. We're not going to obviously open up another section. But as we work through the budget process, that's how we base our class sizes. So we try to go by a class size goal. And the state has state goals that is another alternative way to do if you wanted to budget that way. But the Derry School District has their own school board class size goals, and that's how we prepare our budget. So what I wanted to start on the first school, this chart is very similar to one that I've been providing for many years. In your book, I also presented a chart. It's in the beginning of your book under enrollments. So it's the same one that you're looking at now, but I did a chart underneath that says Davis demographics. Now, we didn't put it up on the slide for the PowerPoint because it would really be hard for anybody to see it. But it's in the book where you have the 2 enrollment projections. This is the first one, that's the top of the page. And this is using the methodology that I have used for many years. And with kindergarten, I max out all of my kindergarten classes to make 18 students in each class with existing classes right now. And then for my grade 1, I take all of my kindergartens that we currently have, and then we do a 7-year average of how many first graders we've had coming in outside of the district kindergarten programs. So using that same methodology and taking our first graders and promoting them, and each grade up, promoting a grade up. For Derry Village, for example, we would be removing 1 grade 3 classroom. If you look in your book, I don't know why they're in a different order in your book, but Derry Village, if you look at Davis demographic, if you were to go with the Davis demographic methodology of projections, there would be no added classes and no reduction of classes. Can everybody see those under their enrollment in their book? Did they find them? No. So if you go to the tab in your budget book that says enrollment, and the name of the school should be on the bottom of each page. So for Derry Village, for example, I know that we obviously did Davis demographic for a reason. We wanted to know what our projections would look like for future budgets. And so when I did the budget, I wanted to use both methodologies to see if the way we budget is close in numbers to Davis demographic projections. And in Derry Village, we are able to remove 1 class, but if you use Davis demographics, you would have no change in any of your grade levels. Again, that's probably because we had some move-ins, because we're really just promoting our current second graders. The next one is East Derry. And East Derry, if you looked at, this is a projection using my methodology, we would be removing a grade 3 teacher, a grade 4 teacher, and adding a grade 5 teacher. If you look at your Davis demographic that's in your book, they too, using their projections, would be removing a grade 3, removing a grade 4, but they don't have the additional class in grade 5, and it's actually a bubble year, it looks like, in grade 5. So that's, again, based strictly on current students in our 4th grade class. Ernest P. Barca. So for Ernest P. Barca, our methodology shows that we would add a grade 5 class, and Davis Demographics shows that we would add a grade 3 and a grade 5. Now, we know that based on numbers, we don't need to add a grade 3, but we wanted to just show you these as an example so that you can see that we are really close to Davis Demographics, and that when we do add sections or reduce sections, we are using actual students, and the methodology is very similar to Davis projections. Grinnell. So Grinnell, using our projections, we would need to add a grade 2 teacher, and we would remove a grade 5 teacher. Now, if you look at that Grinnell, when I do these, as long as they haven't gone over school board goal, we can remove a class. Now, you see that it's 24 students and the school board goal is 25. Do we want to look at that before we, when we finish our budget process, and maybe people are uncomfortable being that close, knowing that Grinnell can tend to have a lot of move-ins and move-outs, so that grade 5 may be something that you would want to look at. But if you looked through Davis Demographic, they would have us add a grade 1, add a grade 2, add a grade 3. With our projections, we would net no change in staffing based on adding 1 and subtracting 1. South Range, with our methodology, we would need to add a grade 1. Now, South Range is a little unique this year because we have students that had to go to the overflow schools because South Range was full in the kindergarten programs. So we are bringing those children back and then also adding our 7-year average. So we would add a first grade to South Range and remove a grade 4. Davis Demographics would have us remove grade 4 and a grade 5. Now, Gilbert H. Hood and West Running Brook, again, we're just taking our 5th graders, promoting them to the middle school, and promoting our 7th and 8th graders. So no real change there, but if you look at, for Gilbert H. Hood, Davis Demographics projected that they would have 577 students for Gilbert H. Hood next year, and our methodology, based on actual students, says that we would have 546 students. So we're, it's a 30-student difference, but. And West Running Brook, Davis Demographics would project 523 students, and we have 541 based on actual students. So, and a lot of that can be just moving throughout the district. They, start at one school, they're moving over, because it's pretty close by what it's off from West Running Brook having, we have more in ours than Davis, but Hood has more than Davis. So I also wanted to note that when you look at the end of the bottom of these sheets, as we know this year, we have about 75% of our students are participating in in-person learning in our schools, and we have over 600 students who are doing our remote learning program. We also have 246 students between K through 8 and the Pinkerton program, 246 students who are doing homeschooling, which is different than remote learning. Homeschooling means that you are truly doing your own program and you are not participating in any programs at the school level. But this year, last year we had 151 homeschoolers. So those children who were homeschooled last year and prior to that are probably going to continue homeschooling. This year probably didn't make a difference for them. But we did have an additional, I think we had 92 additional students who went homeschool this year. And of those, I believe 72 were K through 8. So knowing that those students went homeschool this year for the first time, we anticipate that those were due to COVID and that those students would be returning to us next fall. And we also verified that prediction with principals who, when we talked about certain students who had gone homeschool, they confirmed that yes, their families had said they were only going to homeschool this year and they expected them to come back next year. So when we did that, we added our homeschool students to our projected enrollments to make sure that we include those students that we know are going to come back. So you can see at West Running Brook that we added 13 students that we anticipate going next year that are in our homeschool program this year. Again, those are not 13 students who were homeschooled last year. They're new homeschoolers. And same thing for all of our other schools. I've listed under each school how many kids from their school are homeschooled right now, and it's on each one of the enrollment sheets that we just went through. They all have them listed of how many students. As a note, when we are getting our adequacy numbers, we do not receive adequacy on any homeschooled student, with the exception of high school students. The RSA states that we can get portions of adequacy based on high school students who may take classes. So for us, if there's a homeschool student in 9th grade who wants to take a certain math class at Pinkerton, we could get a portion of adequacy for those students. But the RSA is only specific to high schoolers, not to elementary and middle. And we have in the past had homeschoolers who do access some of our programs, and the district does not receive any funds for that. So now that I've gone over the 246 students right now who are homeschooled, remember that adequacy is always based on the prior year's enrollment numbers. So when they're calculating next year's adequacy and they get the average daily membership, we have 246 homeschoolers that the district is not receiving adequate funds for. So I just want to keep that in mind as we go through our budget process, because that does have an impact when they start projecting adequacy for the district.
Jane, can I just clarify those numbers? On the notes sheet, it was, the 246 is current homeschool. You had last year, it was 94. So the difference was 152. Is that accurate?
There was 151, but some of those are high schoolers, so we're only looking at, I think there was 94 new students to homeschool this year. And
Okay.
72 of them are K through 8.
Okay, I just want to make sure the number is accurate because that's going to make a difference in the adequacy. So the
So 72 homeschool students are new this year for K through 8, and I've included those in my enrollment numbers.
okay.
Can you give me that cover page? Because I should have pulled mine up. No, that's the one that has the logo on the top. Right in the beginning of your book. This one? Yep. Sorry, I had pulled that page out of my book. Let me just make sure that I've got the right amount. So I apologize. We should have clarified that the 94 homeschool students last year were K through 8. So there were 151 total. So it was 94 were K through 8, and the rest were Pinkerton students. Sorry about that.
And is the adequacy related to those K through 8? Has that already been removed from this budget for next year?
The adequacy?
Right.
No, for adequacy, when I put it in as a place marker, I only put in the adequacy that we know we're getting this year because they haven't put out any projection yet for next year. So it's not been included in there or reduced from there. Because next year they'll be adding on the kindergartners that we have this year because now we have full-day kindergarten. So they'll be counted as 3,700 unless they change the cost per pupil. And so we'll gain on those students, but we don't know what the adequacy formula is going to be for 21, 22. So I'm not sure whether that will change or not. So I don't really have a projection for what next year's adequacy will be. I just used the current adequacy as a placeholder.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll have to have a discussion as a group. Do we want to reduce the revenues by those 72? We're hoping that our joint legislative task force with the town is going to try to get for a 1-year, interim that next year for the 21-22 adequacy will be related to actual enrollment and not prior year. But who knows if we can get something like that passed. So a discussion we'll have to have is, do we need to remove that 72 from revenue in this budget, regardless of what happens with the formula and everything else? So keep that in mind going forward, I think. Okay, moving forward, we want to talk about salaries and what we have and what we don't have included in your budget. Our educational assistants, which could be computer assistants, reading assistants, special education assistants, et cetera. Their contract expires this coming June, so the school board is currently in negotiations or have finished negotiations. We don't have a dollar amount yet for a warrant article, but we'll be bringing forward a warrant article to you once we have it. And so there are no increases in wages for the educational assistants included in this budget. The teacher salaries, that contract also expires at the end of this fiscal year, end of June 30. And again, there are no increases in the 21-22 budget, as there will be a warrant article for increases for teaching staff. Food service, while it's not under the general fund, we just wanted to keep you updated on that contract. Their contract expires June 30th of 2022. And that's a 2-year agreement with a 60-cent per hour wage increase for our cooks and servers and head cooks. Non-union staff, there is a wage pool included in the budget of 3%, and that's for all non-union staff members, including the positions that I've noted: custodians, maintenance secretaries, administrative assistants, finance department, tech department, principals, and administration. So each year, we know that some of our high costs are attributed to benefits. And like I said, some of the numbers that we're getting came in after we already completed the budget for 21-22. And one of them is the health insurance and dental. Now, we took a 5-year average of increases for health insurance, and that came to 5.86%. So when using a 5.86% on the health insurance, that came to an increase of our overall budget of $458,000. Now, we also, a day after we completed this, received the guaranteed maximum for health insurance, which came in at 6.1%. So for next meeting, we're going to reflect that difference from the 5.86% to the 6.1%. So we're going to have to include a little bit of that increase. Dental insurance,
We had included 3.9% increase estimated, and when we got the guaranteed maximum, there is a 0% increase for dental, and that too will be reflected when we come back for our next budget meeting, since the budget had already been done when the number came in. Now, teacher retirement, this is where we're seeing a significant change because the rates went up 3% on average between the two of them for New Hampshire retirement. So right now, the New Hampshire retirement, starting July 1 this coming year, is 21.02%. That's an increase over the prior year of $665,000. That's without having any teacher increases on salary. Now, the rate for teacher retirement is different than employee rate for retirement. So, for example, all those non-union employees that I mentioned, custodians, secretaries, administration, the rate that the district pays on their behalf is 14.06%. So on our budget, that would be an increase of $119,000. Now, that does include the 3% wage pool that we did include in the budget. So the 119 wouldn't change throughout the budget process unless you changed any non-union staffing or non-union salary increases. Otherwise, that 119 is going to stay the same. The teacher retirement rate, remember, will be the 665 unless you change any positions in the budget, plus the New Hampshire retirement that's going to be on the warrant article for any staffing, the cost increase for the teacher's warrant article. Again, the district has no control over New Hampshire retirement. Those are rates that we have to pay for every employee that works more than 35 hours a week, mandatory. This just informational graph so that you can see our guaranteed maximum rate for anybody that's new this year. We get what our health insurance company calls a guaranteed maximum rate, meaning that as they go through and they do rate setting, they're telling us during our budget process that our guaranteed maximum rate will not exceed what they just gave us. So when we get our actual rate next spring, which is always after the March vote, unfortunately, that rate cannot exceed 6.1%, which is what they just gave us. And we wanted to show you this so you can see where the guaranteed maximum rate came in and what the actual rate came in. And you can see that we've been fairly close the last few years. And then you have some years where it came in much higher than the actual rate came in. Now remember, when we talked, or I've said at a board meeting, regarding the health insurance, that we're going to be getting a rebate of about totally a little over 400,000, and some of that goes towards the district, some of it goes as a rebate to staff. And the reason for that was less claims during COVID. So I was a little bit surprised by the 6.1. I was hoping it was going to come in lower, and maybe our actual rate will. But given that they have had less claims during COVID, we were hoping for a lower rate to come in. But 6.1, where other districts have had higher rates, and we've had years where it's been much higher. You can see in one year in 2003, it was probably at a 28% increase, and back in 2017, we were still closer to like a 13% increase. So 6.1 is not bad, I'm not saying that, but I'm always hopeful for low rates that come in. And this slide's just, again, it's going to review the retirement changes that we just talked about. The retirement rates that I just reviewed are good until June 30th of 2023. So for the next 3 budget cycles, because all New Hampshire retirement rates are always set for 3 years, all of it's going to be based on that 14.06% for employees and 21.02% for teaching staff. Same increase. We just wanted to show you the difference. So for those at home, I don't know if it's hard to read on there, but for the last couple of years, the retirement rate for employees that the district pays on their behalf was 11.17%. Now it's going to be 14.06%. And for the teaching staff, it was 17.80%, and we'll be paying 21.02. To clarify for people watching, that does not mean that teachers, for example, that 21.02% is going into their retirement account individually. This is what we pay on their behalf, and it goes towards the retirement pool, and they do their calculation. But so I just wanted to review that, but that was an average total increase of 3.22% for teachers and 2.89% for employees. When we're looking at our overall budget, like I said, when I looked at, do I need to add general grade level classrooms, or can we remove general grade level classrooms? When we did that, of all the adds and the reductions, it nets to be removing one elementary grade level teacher. Again, keeping with school board recommended goal size. Now, the $92,014, that is salary and benefits. Okay? I always want to make sure I clarify that so people don't think that teachers' salaries are $92,000. The next slide, just going to talk a little bit about special education, where the changes are in our budget that we've included. All of these items that I'm talking about are included in your budget. So we are requesting to add one special education teacher for our DEEP program. For those at home, that's our Dairy Early Education Program for students ages 3 and 4. And that would be $98,589. Again, salary and benefits. Remember, we've started to delineate staffing positions. We know that it's more difficult to find special education teachers, so we budget Master's Step 6 for a special education position. For a general education position, you'll see, like on the prior slide, we were budgeting $92,000, which is a Master's Step 3, so staff salary and benefits. So when you're looking through here and you see the difference, that's why. Also requesting to add one special education teacher at South Range. We are also looking to add the South Range NECC, which is our New England Center for Children program for students with autism. That program has been at South Range for several years, and it's been funded by federal funds, not district funds. And we're looking to move that into district funds. And we're also looking to add an additional NECC partner classroom at the middle school level because of the number of fifth graders that will be moving up to the middle school level. We need to add another section. So for moving the South Range program, that would be $352,000 added to the general fund. And the new program for the middle school would be $320,000. Those are based on numbers of students. Yes?
Jim, why are we moving it to the district fund?
I think Mr. Kellen could probably.
Oh, Chris, why are we moving that to the district fund? What was paid by the federal before?
I'm sure I'm going to have to go into this in more depth at a later time, but
Okay.
there are a number of things that are currently in the IDEA federal entitlement, and we continue to add to those things. At some point, something needs to come out. Right now, when I calculated just the things that are currently in there, and then if we were to add the middle school program as well, the additional middle school program, we'd be looking at $2.1 million approximately. The federal entitlement's $1.2 million. So something's needs to move out of there. And we use it as a place to typically pilot and make sure, okay, are we going to need this program long-term? Are we going to need this position long-term? So that's one of the reasons, but I'm sure I'll be getting into it in greater depth with a lot more information as we move through the process, or at least provide it to you all.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and then moving on to the bottom of that slide, increasing the out-of-district tuition by $200,000. For Pinkerton tuition, general education, as a reminder to people at home, Pinkerton Academy charges a rate per student, which is their tuition rate. So for next year, if we use a 4% projection on their rate, would be $13,759.20. Every student that attends Pinkerton is charged that rate to the districts. In addition to that, as I get to the special education, any other service on top of just your general education is all add-ons in tuition. So the $13,000 is a base tuition for every child that attends. Anything that's special ed related is additional. So for Pinkerton, we use the same methodology of promoting our 8th graders, graduating our 12th graders. So we did come to 1,676. We, on average, have 20 students who attend their HiSET program, which is their GED, high school certification program. And then we estimated that 10 of the students would go to next charter school. So that would net 1,646 students. Now, if you're looking at your overall budget or your summary, you're going to notice that the cost was a bit higher this year. Last year, the board and fiscal advisory recommended reducing an additional 30 students from the projected enrollment. Now, if you were to do that this year, it would be a savings, I think I put it in your cover sheet, would be an additional savings of a little over $400,000 if you reduced 30 students out of the Pinkerton projections. Now, you're safe to do that typically because you have move-ins, you have move-outs, you might have students who here are showing as juniors, but they're really seniors and they're going to graduate this year. So using the 30 students, I think that that would be a safe number to use. I'm not sure we would go higher than that, but I think that you could make the case to reduce it by 30. And we also have one student currently who takes virtual math through Pinkerton for an advanced math class. It's even further than our PACE program. So that one student to take the virtual math is a cost of $1,700 per year. And I know that Pinkerton has started working on their budget, and Mary Ann did a call with the other superintendents today with Pinkerton, and typically we get it around the middle of Thanksgiving. So unfortunately, as we go through our budget process, we're not really sure what the big chunk of our budget is going to be based on what their rate will be, but we're, pretty confident in the number of students that we're using moving forward. The next slide talks about the projected Pinkerton tuition for special education. Now, hold on. I'm going to make sure I get to my page so I can talk about the differences. So using the numbers that we have here for resource, which are additional services for students who need resource services at Pinkerton, we used a 4% projection on each one of these programs. And again, once Pinkerton gives us our rate, we go back in here and we make all our adjustments. Whether it's up or down, we'll make the adjustments. But for resource, we added 4% for the rate per student. Again, that $9,097 is in addition to the $13,000 that we pay for the child taking resource. But next year, we're predicting 301 students for resource, and that's based on their current students and the students we have now in 8th grade who are receiving resource services or specialized learning that we know are moving up to Pinkerton. And so on our budget, that's an additional 36 students, additional resource for next year. So there's an increased cost there. ACT program, we're projecting 8 less students than we had in the budget. And the PASSES program, we are adding 1 additional student. And the NECC program, we're adding 1 additional student as well. So we did not change the special education assistance number or the additional services, which is a flat estimated $200,000 for staffing. But all of those will come out when they submit their budget. I know that Bill spoke with Joe Crawford about his projections for the next tuition and the number of students, and he's projecting 68 students next year. And the 9626 was his projected amount. We also don't get adequacy on the students who attend next, but they also offset that by not charging us that amount for, that we would have received in adequacy for students who go to Pinkerton for high school level. For technology, I know that Dr. Dancy, if you want further information, can do this at another budget meeting, so I'm just going to quickly go through them. Reducing $8,000 because we have used a consultant for our proxy servers for, might be the same person as long as I've been here, very long time. And we're going to be transitioning away from that, so it's a reduction of $8,000. We are increasing, because of our bandwidth, is going to be increasing and adding a VoIP telephone system to Derry Village School, which I believe right now we have at Barca, Grinnell, and Gilbert H. Hood. Okay. We're also increasing $60,000 for teacher replacement computers, increasing some software for the nursing software, the Mosaic food service application, which is our new food service software. And there are other softwares that are added, which I believe all of the softwares were listed in your budget book under the 2200 tab. We did reduce the amount of Chromebooks for next year because we have them in this year's budget, and you know that we're using some of our CARES Act money to purchase the additional Chromebooks for this year. So we decreased the budget next year by $16,000 since we'll need less of those. But we did increase $30,000 for the installation of a new firewall and the filter for the gateway devices. Again, any questions on technology? That would really be Dr. Dancy to give a good explanation on that. So our maintenance improvement plan, last year we went through our budget process and we received the one-time fiscal disparity aid. The state recommended that you use those funds for one-time expenditures. The board and the fiscal advisory committee were very generous in funding a few of our maintenance projects that we might otherwise never have been able to get, at least not all in the time frame that were able to get them by using the fiscal disparity money. So last year we had a total maintenance improvement plan budget of $1.4 million. With that, we were able to repair a large section, or pretty much the whole section of Gilbert H. Hood roofing over the gymnasium. That was done over the summer. We also were able to pave South Range, Derry Village, and West Runningbrook. So if you've been to any of those schools, you'll see the new pavement. That is the base coat, and the top coat for the paving will be completed in the spring, which is a typical process for them to do with paving so that it can settle. It'll all be restriped next year once the top coat is done. But we were able to do all three of those schools for paving. For next year, Jeremy went through and he has done a district assessment of equipment and needs for what he can put in for his next 5 years, projecting expenditures for the district. Next year, he is looking, and you can see further out, if we start at district-wide roof repairs, he's using an estimated $150,000 just going out for the next 5 years because there's always going to be roof repairs that have to occur. And then he has $10,000 for striping. We try to stripe all our parking lots every year to freshen them up and make the property look nice. You can see then the next one for Derry Village roof replacement, he anticipates that you would not need to do that until 24, 25. If you remember, we did have an extensive report on the condition of our roofs. And when speaking to him, if you wanted to, even move that further back if that was necessary. We could certainly look to doing that. And the South Range roof replacement would be in the year 23-24. Now, they're in that order just based on the condition of the roofs, and those roofs cannot be repaired with the same system that we've been doing over at Gilbert H. Hood or the other schools where we're getting the replacement. They would, the repairs, they would actually have to have a full replacement. And further down, you can see district-wide parking lot drain repairs, $15,000. The windowsill repairs, there is a sheet that we did put in your budget book after the maintenance improvement plan that describes, I think he actually put a picture in there of the windowsills. Those are at Derry Village to repair those windowsills around the entire building. If you go over there, they're actually breaking off. District-wide replacement equipment, that's really if we have to replace snow blowers, lawn mowers, and I think if you look at any other district or any other municipality, $20,000 in replacement equipment for 8 properties is very conservative, and we're very conscious of the budget, so we wanted to make sure we came in conservatively. We did put $25,000 for bathroom upgrades. We are continually having to replace faucets and things like that. And if a toilet or anything or the stalls have to be replaced, we need to have money in there for that. District-wide flooring, $84,000. Sometimes because we do have schools that are older and we have to have abatements done on that, those are very costly to replace those floorings. And when we are doing it, we're replacing carpeting with the tile like here in this cafeteria. We're not really replacing any place with carpeting. District-wide doors and replacements, $10,000. The West Running Brook, it would be the last dormer because he's already completed all the other ones. There's only one more to go, and that was $10,000 to replace that, and then they're good to go. Further down, we put in some money for food service replacement equipment. We did hire MCOR this summer to go through and do repairs on all of their freezers. There was a lot of work that needed to be done on the food service equipment. Their freezers and walk-in coolers, walk-in freezers are very old. They are hanging in there, barely. So we did have to put some money this summer and last year into getting that equipment going and replacing doors and seals and things like that. Jeremy's also putting in to replace a McQuay HVAC unit here at West Running Brook. It is operational. He reviewed that when he did your HVAC update last week. But that would need to be replaced, and he's putting that in for next year for $50,000. Actually, I think that it's probably a little bit higher than that, and I know he's trying to get pricing on it now. District-wide duct cleaning. This summer, when we looked at whether we would be able to have the ducts, the ventilation ducts cleaned, it was a cost of $250,000 estimated to come in and clean all of those. Now, whether the board wants to look at that and maybe do a school at a time or do 2 schools at a time, those are certainly things that are up for discussion. And some schools are going to need more than others. For example, Grinnell's are fairly new, so they would need less done than some of the other schools. But to be clear for anybody at home, the buildings, as Jeremy pointed out at the last meeting, the HVAC units are running as they're intended to. There's more ventilation in our schools. The air is clean. We are bringing in more fresh air than we actually need to. So all of that is operational. It's all working correctly. But eventually, we do want to get to doing the duct cleaning. Grinnell water main system. So Marianne, myself, the town, Jeremy, we have been working on the Grinnell water issue where, people have been there and you can see discoloration, which is from iron. And it was determined after doing testing with the town and us at the district that it's the water main line that leads from Grinnell out to the road. I believe it's on Mount Pleasant. And that is the district's responsibility to replace. So whether the board, for right now, what the town has done is flushed out the lines, so the water is clear as can be right now, and the town will continue to do that until we're able to replace this. And we certainly can't replace it from now until the spring. So this would be something we'd have to do in the spring. If the board chooses to do that project before this next fiscal year, they can take that out and take it out of this current year. The next item is HVAC unit replacements. We have a lot of HVAC units. Jeremy will be here for the next budget meeting, and he can go over how many we have and what the cycle would be. But he said that there were some that would need to be replaced, and that you would have a continuing cycle of needing to do that. I believe that some of the schools, like Derry Village, have at least 12, not that need to be replaced, but I believe there's 12 up there. And Grinnell has sort of always been an issue with replacing the walkways, at least on the left-hand side of the building in front of the gym entrance, and I believe the main entrance as well. So you can see that there's not a lot in there that doesn't seem necessary. And the board certainly and the fiscal advisory can look through those, and we can have further discussions on them. And again, Jeremy, who's our director of facilities, will be here at the next budget meeting. And if you send questions to Patty Doyle, he can be prepared with any questions that you might have for that meeting. Student transportation, the contract calls for a 3% increase on the rates. Chris Kellen went through the transportation budget, and he was able to reduce 3 buses on special education in-district transportation, and no other changes on number of buses for large transportation, and a total cost to our budget for the whole transportation is $3.9 million. Not new costs, but that's the total cost. To review the long-term debt, we have 2 bonds left. One of them is the Honeywell project, which was the phase 1 and phase 2. As you know, that's the energy efficiency project, and the bond for Gilbert H. Hood and Barca. You can see that the Gilbert H. Hood Barca bond is going to expire in 2024. And as a note, of those 2 projects, neither of them can be refinanced. I know that that was a question that somebody had. Just want to talk a minute about the budget revenue. Again, that one-time fiscal disparity aid was this year only. So we don't anticipate receiving that again next year, so we have to plan the budget accordingly, knowing that we're going to have that budget shortfall from this year to next year. This year, we do anticipate receiving one-time kindergarten aid, which the state is giving under House Bill 1558, which states that any school district who starts a tuition-free full-year kindergarten program would get adequacy for each one of those students. So for the Derry School District, that was about $506,000 that we are going to be receiving this fiscal year. So next year it will go away, but it will be, those students will be added into our average daily membership, just as if they were any grade level, grade 1 students. So they go into our general membership next year. We've also reduced our Medicaid revenue to about $50,000. In the past, as I've noted in this presentation, we've received up to $500,000 in Medicaid reimbursements, and Medicaid reimbursements are just really are not receiving much of anything. So if we receive more, great, it will go towards the unreserved fund balance, but I don't anticipate receiving much more than that. And we also anticipate, and I've reflected it in our budget and revenues, reduction in building rentals. We don't know what next year is going to bring. We rely a lot on, different clubs rent our gyms, and we receive funds for that. We've always had church in our schools. We don't have any of those rentals this year. And we're not sure what we're going to bring next year. Obviously we're going to take it as it comes for the district, and if it's allowable, we'll welcome back all those clubs. We'll welcome back church if they want to come back. But right now, we'd rather anticipate a reduction in those revenues and see where we go so we don't cut ourselves short. On the allocation of the total budget, you can just see where the big pieces of the pie are. Salary, Pinkerton tuition and benefits. And if you combine Pinkerton regular education and Pinkerton special education. But those are the three biggies in our budget. And then transportation. All the other items are much smaller portions of our total budget. And some areas where you really can control are the really tiny parts of the budget, like supplies or repairs, things like that. But contracted services, benefits, utilities, you really have no control over those. Because Pinkerton Academy, we can only control the number of, our estimated number of students. They set the rate, and so there's really no control over that. And there's no control over, again, New Hampshire retirement, and salaries are based on negotiated contracts. So this next slide, they are really hard to read on the screen. I apologize for that. But this is where we break down the budget in what we call basically by object code, meaning it's broken down by a section of your budget. So salaries, benefits, repairs, transportation, supplies, utilities, so that you can see the percentage increase in our overall budget from the prior year. Now, to just point out a few of them, you can see that salary decreased 0.97%. Remember, there's no increase on teaching staff or assistants in there because it'll be on warrant articles. Benefits increased 7.6% because of the increase on health insurance and New Hampshire retirement. Moving a little bit further down, you can see that repairs is down, a reduction of 25%, because we don't have that roofing project and the paving projects anymore in this budget. And two others to highlight. NECC program is up 51% because we're looking to add the middle school program and to bring South Range back to the general fund. And the last one to point out would be supplies, a increase of 12.67, but to clarify that, that's not paper and pencils and supplies like that. It's supplies is also, because that object code is in the 600s, it also encompasses software. So we know that we had quite a bit of an increase in software because we are using a lot more this year and next year than we have in the past. So overall, you can see that the district budget is, for expenditures, is 2.2% of an increase. Pinkerton Academy is 6.91% of an increase. So the total overall estimated expenditure increase on the budget is 3.53%. Now, 3.35% sounds fair and reasonable until you take into consideration the revenue of losing that fiscal disparity aid. And so that's where we were looking at when we were preparing our budget, knowing they're going to have that revenue shortfall. And we really tried to come in as fiscally conservative as possible when presenting this budget. So that is I thought it was quick, but I guess I went really long. There are a lot of components that go into this budget that we can have departments review questions. I know that we have, I think, over 25 questions came in from a fiscal advisory member and a board member, and all of the administrators have been answering those questions. So instead of waiting to give those to you until the next budget meeting, as soon as those questions are all answered, we're just going to share the document with you, and then you can see the questions and the answers, and maybe that will help clarify things to you, and maybe it's going to have you ask a further clarifying question. But instead of waiting, I think it would be better for everybody to have information as quick as possible as soon as we're able to provide it. So again, next budget meeting will have the guaranteed maximum for health insurance. It will have the new unemployment, workman's comp, property and liability, dental insurance. All those numbers just came in and they'll all be revised. We will send it electronically prior to the meeting, and we will also send the questions prior to the meeting so that you can get those as well. And we'll do a little bit more of financial, as we did over the summer, we did a 5-year projection. We'll give a little bit more analysis for the next budget meeting, as we know that it was requested to have some different scenarios on rate increases. At this time, I'm not sure that they've changed the assessed valuation yet, but right now it's 3 cents approximately for every 100,000 that you're going to change in the budget. So if you add 100,000 to the budget, it's additional 3 cents on the tax rate. Remove 100,000, you're reducing the tax rate by 3 cents. So, and they should be setting the tax rate soon, and we will have I'll bring our projected tax rate when we come to the next budget meeting. So if you have any questions outside of what we might discuss for the next 15 minutes, please send them to Patty Doyle at our office, and she can add them to the ongoing document that we have as a Google Doc right now. And I want to make sure that I thank all the administrators and directors for helping with the budget, and Patty as well, and a huge thank you to Bill Roy, our accountant, for pulling all the numbers together. And again, thank you to you, Bruce, for your document.
So I have a question. The last year's budget session went way too long. I think it was into December before we decided to even talk about what to do about the budget. One of the recommendations of the Fiscal Advisory Committee was to have the school board make a recommendation to the school administration very early on in the budget cycle as to what kind of increase is acceptable. If I look at the district assessment that's in this budget book, it's a 15% increase, which amounts to about a $2.30 increase in the tax rate. I highly doubt that that would pass the voters. So is the school board prepared to give a recommendation rather than wait until December? It can give them a recommendation early on so that they can adjust the budget accordingly. And I guess you're in the hot seat, Derek.
That's right. I think it's difficult. Jane and I had a conversation probably a month or two ago, and it's hard to just say we want a flat 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5% looks good this year.
Don't do percent. What
Yeah.
kind of tax rate increase are you willing to accept?
Well, either way, it all lines up the same way. I mean, one of the
Not
big
really.
issues is
Not really. I mean, if you go to the taxpayer and you tell them you're going to get a hit with a $2 per thousand increase, I think that's going to be a hard sell. If you tell them it's
Sure
a
it would be.
60%, I mean, a 60-cent increase, it might be an easier sell.
right, and I think there's so much information that Jane's just getting information now. So it may not even be feasible to say, we only want a 60-cent increase. She may come back to us and say, okay, well, we're going to have to cut 15 teachers then because the retirement went up this amount. The process has always been, they give us, and they don't look for Disneyland. We're going to build a theme park out back at Dairy Village. They always give us very bare bones budgets.
I understand
the
that.
process is, I don't think it would work if we told them we want a specific number. We always ask Pinkerton to give us their numbers early. That's why it goes into December, because we don't get their numbers until the end of November.
But
This
the
year
thing
we've
is,
asked
if you,
them
but if you
again.
go back the last 2 budget cycles, it's always been in December where Dan gave a number to the school administration, and we add in additional budget meetings to try to
Yeah.
figure out how to meet that goal.
And I understand, and that's why we asked them to prepare the budget and have it ready tonight, instead of having, we usually do like the overview with the buildings and all that stuff, so we wanted it earlier. We've asked Pinkerton to have their number to us at least 2 weeks earlier. I haven't heard back from them if they're going to allow that this year. That would help, because
luck.
that's a big number. If it's 6%, hopefully it's not, but if it is, we couldn't just pick our number and then do all this work, and then Pinkerton comes in at 6, and we're like, oh, okay, I guess we have to go back to the drawing board again. So we spend a month and a half picking our number, and just to have Pinkerton come in and say, nope, it's double this year. Then we have to go back to the drawing board again. So, I mean, it's been prolonged in the past, but I think by moving it back at least 2 weeks to get this actual budget discussion, I think helps. And maybe in the future, if it stabilizes, I'm always a game for doing things differently. I've taken a lot of recommendations this year. We started earlier. We even had a summer session to get ideas. and these guys have been great by getting this budget together earlier than usual, even though and based on that, there's information we don't have yet. But yeah, I think the whole idea was to get into it earlier, the discussions earlier, allow for questions earlier, and I think we're 2 weeks ahead of last year, so we got here.
Bruce, can I also, thank you for bringing up what you anticipate the tax rate would be. I also want to mention, I will be for the next budget meeting showing a calculation of anticipated revenue that we can use for next year's taxes with the retained funds that the board voted to retain out of this past year's unreserved fund balance. So we had $530,000 as a retained fund, and we added another, say, I think it was $644,000, somewhere around that. So we have $1.1 million that is in a retained fund that can be used to offset taxes. So as we go into next year, and I'm not saying this to not cut the budget or anything like that, I'm just saying it to explain to people that there is the retained fund of $1.1 million that can be used to offset taxes next year. I also, when I was doing my projecting for the unreserved fund balance, I only projected $2.5 million for next year. So if we have excess unreserved fund balance, it's more than 2.5 at the end of June 30th, that would also be a form of a revenue that reduces the tax rate. So I just wanted to highlight those two things. And the adequacy is unknown for next year, so not really sure where that's going to go. But the other items that we budgeted, school building aid stays consistent. There's no change to that. Catastrophic, used to be catastrophic aids, now special ed aid. You know, that always fluctuates as well. But just want to make sure that we pointed that out, that like Derek said, we are early in the budget season, so there are things that are going to change and progress as we go along the budget.
Just if I can add in might help buffer that question, Bruce, you know, we do have a sending town update this week, so we may get some enlightenment from Pinkerton during the week that might come back to us and help out. I think Derek's point and that you're hearing is that the variables of this district, primarily because of Pinkerton, makes it a little complicated to be able to say, hey, this is what we want, 2%, and then you spin your wheels looking at that, and then it's futile because Pinkerton could come back with something else. My thought on this budget is that here we are again, once again, trying to be proactive on this board to try and make some, fiscal cuts or, look at it fiscally wise, and there's outside sources like retirement again rolling back that's going to affect what we're looking at. So that's the point just to consider to your question of Derek. I'm going to accelerate off of Bruce's question, however, and I'm going to ask Jane when Jeremy comes back next week, would you have him look at the projected maintenance? And I've been a proponent of where we're going with maintenance at this point. I'm really pleased about it. I could see it was going to hit this district pretty hard 2 years ago. But if we could look at what cutting $500,000 off of that maintenance would look like for next year and see what we can take of that money and put it off, as I'm looking at the list of things there. I don't like mildew in buildings, and I don't like seeing deterioration, and I think we're on a good path to start taking care of our facilities, but see how close he can come to $1 million, postponing those maintenance costs for next year, pushing them back another year. I would like to see that, if that helps. Bruce's question of what does the board want to see? Well, here we are, first night of the budget meeting, and that's a target I think we should look at. That's it.
So I can have, Jeremy actually, and I had that discussion today, that if items had to be put off for another year, what would we do? So I know he does have a idea of what he would do. And, going right into this budget session, we could automatically reduce the budget by a little over $400,000 by doing consistently what we've done the past couple of years and reducing the projected Pinkerton numbers by 30 students.
Well, one of my questions was to reduce it by 15 to level fund it to this past year. So if you think 30 is fine, I'm fine with that. My other question is, I guess this is 2 years running now. Did you get any response for the dairy representatives of the Pinkerton trustees to attend these sessions so they can see what we're going through?
The
I
same
know-
letter, we requested them to get the numbers to us a couple weeks earlier. We requested to have one of our dairy trustees attend the budget sessions. The only thing we've got back is, Tim Powers plans to show up in December to go over their budget, but no response to if the dairy trustees are going to come to any of our actual meetings where we're dissecting this stuff and watching us make the sausage, I guess, so.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Powers will be at the December one, the December meeting. And we had a good sending superintendent's meeting today. I do not think that number will exceed 4%. It is, certainly, from what was stated today, we will not exceed 4% in regular education, and I believe not in special education either. However, regular ed, that was pretty well set today. I don't know what the number will be, but I don't believe it will exceed 4%.
Anyone in Zoom have questions out there? So we have a couple proposals, the maintenance reduction, Pinkerton, at least trying to level fund. We know that there's discussions for how we want to look at the homeschooling, potential loss of adequacy there. I know we're going to talk about legislation at some point with that, but obviously for budgeting, I'm not sure how much we're going to gamble on that. Pinkerton, we're waiting for them if they're going to get back to us sooner this year, so hopefully we can get to an end quicker. I think that's everything we've kind of went over. Anybody else have any ideas they want to look at? I know we're going to start sending questions in, and most likely the admin will start building presentations for us. Obviously, special ed would be the big target one this year. But just send in the questions. Yes, every year.
Derek, I have a question.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we really have to take a look at this year, Jane brought up a good point, is the Pinkerton reduction in the students. This year we saw a lot of parents decide to go homeschool. They pulled out of Pinkerton. Besides, those numbers won't even be in here right now because Pinkerton's not going to tell you how many. I know some of my parents that they did pull the kids out. That's probably going to happen the rest of this year. Who knows if it'll happen next year, but we probably could go with 35, 40, like I think Dan McCrinna had mentioned it once before, and still be safe. That's one of the options we have. We want to reduce some stuff instead of taking it from something we really need to keep in there. That's something I think we need to discuss even further as we go along.
Yep. I think that's a good target. Did I hear somebody on Zoom trying to cut through? Go ahead, Erica. Erica, can you hear us? Oh, there she was.
Anyone else with any questions for this evening?
I think there was a delay.
Yeah, I did.
There she is, okay.
I was just gonna say, I think we should take a close look at the special education budget and assess the need to pull the South Range classroom out of the federal funds. We've had this discussion almost every year I've been on the board, and I recognize that there would certainly be other uses for those funds. But since we're already starting at $1.5 million deficit, excuse me? I just think that's something we need to figure out how badly we need it this year, because unless there's other uses for those funds that we really need, I'd want to hear the case for it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
If I can, just as a reminder, if everybody can check their SAU emails regularly, so that since we are going to be sending out documents to keep everybody informed of any changes that we have, that way everybody has it at the same time and real time.
I just want to thank everyone again, either participating remotely or in person, the admin for all the work they did to get this ready a little earlier this year, especially with all the delays. That I know it wasn't just earlier, it was also waiting for many numbers to come in that were delayed because of other places being delayed. So Bruce, thanks for the document you helped create. That's excellent. I'm a numbers guy, and this is very interesting to look at. So, and everyone participating again, your input is very helpful, and we appreciate the time that you're taking with your family to be here. So thank you very much.
Okay, our next meeting will be on Monday, November 2nd, and in the meantime, everyone stay safe and healthy. Thank you again for all your time and commitment. Good night.
Because